This is what happens when an inside joke turns into a game, which then turns into a series, which then turns into a YouTube analysis video years later. Hi, how's it going, everybody? Alright, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. This is easily the most insane video I have ever worked on. We're talking playing through 6, count them, 6 FNAF fan games, almost getting a Trojan virus on my brand new computer, countless hours of research on random wiki pages, conducting an interview with one of the developers, and losing my sanity in the process. When you think of the FNAF fan game greats, what games come to mind? Five Nights at Candy's? Sure. One at Flumpty's? Of course. However, there's another massive FNAF fan game series that is often ignored by the core FNAF fanbase. If you grew up consuming pretty much any and all FNAF content when you were younger, there's a very good chance you've heard of Five Nights at Sonic's. I feel like most people who were into FNAF at one point probably know about this series, or at least the first game, but often don't remember it until it's brought up in a conversation somehow. That's the case for me, at least. I've been on a bit of a FNAF fan game streak recently, with the Five Nights at Candy's video coming out, followed right away with the video on FNAF 6 Freak Show. Because of that, I was bound to get a ton of suggestions for different FNAF fan games to talk about. One of these suggestions was from Shaded Vanilla, who said, "As a person who worked on Five Nights at Sonic's, I seriously hope you both do and don't cover it. I want to see someone give a proper retrospective on the impact the series left on FNAF fan games, mostly negative, as well as a full opinion on the series from someone who wasn't invested in it for years like most reviews tend to be. But I also really don't want some of the games I worked on in the past to get torn to shreds by a comment section. It's a double-edged sword." When this comment was first brought to my attention, something sparked in me that I hadn't thought of in literal years. I replied to them later on Discord saying, "Also, I don't know if you're the Five Nights at Sonic's person," spoiler alert, they're not, "but even just regarding the comment you posted on YouTube, I literally forgot Five Nights at Sonic's was a thing until this. But I remember playing it when I was younger, Lamau. I will totally do a video on that series eventually." I said this around a month ago, and since some time has passed, I felt like I was ready to cover the absolute beast that is Five Nights at Sonic's. Oh boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. Going into this, I thought I'd play maybe 3 games, talk about some history, and move on. But what I found instead is one of the most insane FNAF rabbit holes on the entire internet that nobody else is talking about besides those within the FNAS community itself. So, as I like to say around here, strap in everybody, because we're about to explore one of FNAF's most popular sub-communities that's still active 7 years later. But first, this video is sponsored by Dragon City. Dragon City is a free-to-play mobile game where you can collect thousands of dragons and build your own empire. Gather food, gold, and gems in order to grow your city and reach new levels. The best way to grow your dragon empire is to breed dragons together in order to get different dragon eggs. Once the eggs hatch, feed your dragons and watch them evolve. There's even some dragons based off other YouTubers such as Mr. Beast. You can even train your dragons in order to make them more powerful for battle. Dragon City features PvP fights where you can challenge your friends and other Dragon Masters online. Join alliances and interact with the Dragon City community. You'll gain access to exclusive events where you can win tons of rewards. There's even a battle pass and a new minigame every week, where you can claim daily rewards and even new dragons. Download the game by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen and get a special free starter pack of 15,000 food, 30,000 gold, and the Flame Knight Dragon. Thank you to Dragon City for sponsoring the video. Now, let's jump down this rabbit hole, shall we? Okay, before we get into it, everybody listen up. This is really important. I've done a terrible job promoting it, but go and follow my Twitter. It will be linked on the end card and in the description below. Guys, I need more Twitter clout. You gotta back me up here. I promise to post bangers like this and this. We need the Yeah Nation to rise up. Okay, enough shilling for myself. Let's get into it. Right away, when I went to start working on this video, there was a problem. You see, all the official FNAS games had been taken down from GameJolt long ago. As you could probably figure out, this made it pretty hard at first to even find the files to play these fan games. Right off the bat, this was already giving me more questions than answers. Five Nights at Sonic's, one of the most popular fan game series of all time, was mysteriously missing from the place it was uploaded to. This, along with many other questions I'll bring up later, made me realize there was no way I could make this video without a little help from the inside. So after an offer on Twitter, go follow me, I got in contact with Smiler, one of the developers of the new FNAS projects, to answer some questions for me in order to make sense of some of the more confusing aspects of this series. According to him, The creator of the FNAS series, Ian, aka the Cyvap, wanted to move on from the series as a whole, so he just took down the games to reflect his stance. Even with him taking down all the games, however, the Cyvap is still the owner of the FNAS series to this day. The torch was going to be passed down to Smiler at one point, but it never ended up happening. In retrospect, Smiler is glad this never happened, as he feels he could never fully take on the weight of the entire FNAS series. Smiler also told me that the FNAS series was taken down in either 2020 or 2021, but that he couldn't 100% remember. Well, for obvious reasons, the games being down was a huge problem on my end, and it didn't make it any easier on me that Game Jolt is flooded with FNAS fan games. Yes, we are entering fan game territory. If you were to look up Five Nights at Sonic's on Game Jolt, you would be greeted with dozens of fan games based on the original FNAS series. There's remakes, original projects, collections, and so much more. It's a bit overwhelming being real. Thankfully, however, after a bit of snooping around, I was able to find exactly what I needed. A huge shout out to the absolute Chad, Shaded Vanilla, yes, the same one from the comment earlier, for re-uploading the official collection of FNAS games made by the Cyvap in one handy EXE. The collection itself is very nice, and has some info, cover art, and reviews for each game in the series. Seriously, massive shout out to them. Not only did they remind me of this series in the first place, but they preserved the collection that even let me play the games to begin with. With all 5 FNAS games now in my possession, it was finally time to dive in, and take a look at the origins of one of FNAF's most popular fan game series. I'm gonna be real with you all. I was not sure what to expect going into playing Five Nights at Sonic's 1. Obviously, I knew what it looked like and had a basic understanding of what it was, but it had been so long that I really didn't know what to actually expect going in. So, like any smart reviewer, I booted up the game at 4 AM and played it in VC with some friends. Let's just say it wasn't the most structured playthrough ever recorded. You think this is someone's favorite horror game?
It's my favorite horror game.
What? First thing to note here is, what the hell is up with this aspect ratio? It is so weird. It's definitely not 16:9, and while it may look close to 4:3, it's not that either. This leads to everything feeling very cramped on the screen, which is not a good start. Another thing we can just find out by looking at the title screen is that even though this game is literally called Five Nights at Sonic's, half the cast is Mario characters. This has always been one of the most interesting aspects of this series. Why is there so much Mario representation here when the namesake of the series has tons of characters to pick from? To me, it always felt like some sort of cop-out, but thankfully, Smiler had an answer for this question. FNAS, even when it was made, was by no means original. There were so many FNAS ideas. The Cyvap knew this, and wanted to be unique, so he replaced 2 of the characters with Mario characters. He also had no idea how to draw the other Sonic characters. These days, there are more Mario characters than Sonic. This answer is very amusing to me. Just the idea that the Cyvap didn't know how to draw any of the other characters just adds another layer of soul to this classic FNAF fan game. Alright, enough stalling here. It's time to look at the game itself. Here we go. Oh boy, alright. Before any of you in the audience laughed too hard, this was one of, if not the first programming project the Cyvap had ever made. And for that, it's actually quite well made. Outside of the context though, hell no, this game is an absolute dumpster fire. The game was made in Game Maker Studio, not Click Team like the official FNAF games and most other FNAF fan games are. Thinking about it, FNAF Plus, one of the most anticipated FNAF fanverse games, is also being made in Game Maker. Five Nights at Sonic's was truly ahead of the curve. Given that it wasn't made in Click Team, it's safe to say that none of the code here was stolen from official games. And with that in mind, it's not a terrible recreation of FNAF 1. That's all this is, by the way, if you couldn't tell. This is just FNAF 1 with Sonic and Mario characters. You have the cameras, the doors, the lights, the Foxy mechanic in the form of Tails, the power system, it's all here. The biggest omissions here that stood out to me was the lack of any movement in the office. It's just a single image that doesn't scroll in any direction, and the lack of a Freddy mechanic. Quick refresher if you don't know how Freddy works in FNAF 1. He'll start on the show stage and make his way towards the office. However, unlike Bonnie and Chica, once Freddy makes it to the door hallway, he'll just keep going back and forth between those 2 door hallway cameras and occasionally make attempts to get into your office. What you want to do is stall him on the cameras so that he has less of a chance to move closer to your office. You'd think that Sonic would have the same mechanic, but nah, he pretty much works the exact same way as Yoshi and Mario, which are the Bonnie and Chica equivalents. This isn't a terrible thing, but it does remove a lot of the challenge from the original FNAF 1. Okay, enough ignoring it, I should probably address the huge elephant in the room here. The art style. I learned a couple interesting things regarding it while making this video, but let's just talk about it from a surface level for now. Listen guys, it's bad. It looks ugly, all the environments are dreadful to look at, the office is randomly colored dark blue on one of the sides, the fan literally looks like it's sitting on a pile of ashes, there's an abundant use of the MS Paint line tool used here. It's bad. It's that bad. For real this time. But I don't actually hate it. Listen guys, it's bad, okay? We've been over that. But I kinda love how it looks in a weird way. It's very sold that the art was made by someone who was clearly inexperienced. Some of the camera drawings are absolutely hilarious as well.
Oh my god, dude.
Yoshi.
Wait, they're gone, they're in. Oh no, oh my god.
What are you on about?
No, I was...
You're just like saying things.
Dude, I'm just fucking shaking.
I don't know where Mario is. Would this game be better if the art was super well done and refined? Maybe. But the inherently goofy concept of Five Nights at Sonic's, paired with the shitty MS Paint art, really works in its favor. On the subject of MS Paint, I assumed all the game's art was made using said program, but apparently a lot of the initial work here was done in Flipnote Studio first, then traced over in Paint. That fact, while weird at first, does make sense. If you don't have a drawing tablet but do have a DS with Flipnote, it would probably be easier to do the drawings on that application first, then just moving them over to your PC. If the art was really good and everything was taken super seriously, I don't know if I would find the same so bad it's good appeal, to be honest. Because even good art couldn't save this game. It plays like garbage, everything feels clunky, the phone guy is literally some kid doing a shitty Luigi impression, which is actually hilarious.
Oh no.
Oh no. Luigi.
Oh man. Oh, I just hope, well, I'm happy I've gotten to be able to get
No.
this
Luigi.
So anyways,
Is he gonna die or what?
Yeah.
things that you're working
Well, I know he's gonna die, but he's taking this.
no.
Oh no.
Song now. Oh no. Okay, well,
Hurry up and die.
if you're hearing this, just, tell my friends that,
What the fuck is going? Okay, he's dead. Cool. However, even with these obvious issues, it's really hard to hate this game, you know? It was made by a kid trying to learn Game Maker. It was probably a fun project for them to work on, and they more than likely never expected it to get as big as it did once he released it. However, if the internet has taught me anything, scary subject matter and Sonic the Hedgehog are extremely popular when combined. Obviously, Sonic.EXE was a huge inspiration for Five Nights at Sonic's. You can tell that just from looking at the evil version of Sonic in the game. Anyway, history really does repeat itself, as the current fad with Sonic.EXE and Friday Night Funkin is eerily similar to FNAS in many ways. I'm sure whatever next big fad game is will probably have some sort of Sonic.EXE based mod or fan game. It's just kind of tradition at this point. That's pretty much everything regarding FNAS 1. Except Golden Sonic, here's what that looks like if you're curious. It was a simple recreation of FNAF 1 that the Scythe app never thought would take off the way it did. But since the first game did so well, it was only obvious to make a sequel. Five Nights at Sonic's 2 is another recreation game, this time being, of course, a recreation of FNAF 2. The art is slightly better this time around, but it's not any sort of notable improvement overall. Still the same shitty fan and MS Paint graphics. The mask, while it being a Sonic mask is cute, feels incredibly clunky to use. I wish I had a lot more to say regarding the core gameplay here, but it really is just FNAF 2, but it feels worse to play. This also means that the exact same strat that works in FNAF 2, where you only look at the music box camera, applies here as well. As for new characters, Balloon Boy replaces Toad, Luigi replaces the puppet, and there are both toy and withered Sonic and Mario characters. About Luigi being the puppet. Unlike FNAF 2, this game is actually a sequel, so I can only assume after Luigi died in FNAS 1, he somehow became a puppet for this game. Yeah, this game is when they tried to add a lot of lore to it, which makes sense since FNAF 2 also did that. We have a set of arcade minigames here with awful collision for the walls. Like seriously, look at this shit. What is even blocking me from moving forward here? Like really? Anyway, in one game you play as Sonic and have to find a bunch of cloning machines with the other characters in them, and the other minigame you play as Robotnik, who then clones the characters in the machines and turns the original versions evil. Yeah, I don't know or care. If you really want to know about the FNAS lore, there's like a 1 million view YouTube video you can watch of someone explaining it. So just go and watch that later. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this game. I wish I had more to say about it, but it just being a carbon copy of FNAF 2's mechanics makes it hard to add any additional commentary outside of the handful of changes. I think the Scythe app was beginning to feel the heat on this front as well, since going forward, every game in the FNAS series either added a handful of new mechanics or was completely original. It's only up from here, right? Five Nights at Sonic's 3. The game I almost didn't play for this video because I got so upset. I'm glad I did end up going through it, however, because what on the surface just looks like a shitty FNAF 3 clone, a game I'm already not too fond of from a gameplay standpoint, is actually pretty fun. Okay, so right off the bat, I was going into the game with a negative mindset. I had just finished FNAS 2 and thought it would be a good idea to play FNAS 3 directly after to get some serious progress done for the video. This was not a good idea in retrospect, and I don't know what I was thinking. It was already late, it was like 3 AM, and the previous 2 games were just worse versions of FNAF 1 and 2, so you really can't blame me for assuming 3 would be the same. However, there was one final thing that pushed me over the edge when it came to putting me in a bad mood starting this game. And that comes down to one of the most baffling changes in a FNAF fan game that I have ever seen. In every FNAF game with time, you start at 12 and end at 6. It's pretty standard at this point. There are no issues with it, and it worked so well in FNAF 1 for a reason. Well, when I was reading that little description for FNAS 3 in the collection menu, something caught my attention. There's no way, right? Nights now last until 8? What? Literally, what was the thought process behind this change? On paper, it could technically not even matter, since as long as each hour was shortened, it would purely be a cosmetic change. And you know what? Maybe it is. But I don't really feel the need to compare how long the FNAF 3 night is to how long the FNAS 3 night is. Because at the end of the day, I didn't really mind the length of the nights when I finally sat down and actually beat the game. But on that night where I was going to originally play it, this put me in a terrible mood going in. So I played a bit of the game, died to Sonic on night 1, and said, fuck it, I've seen enough, we're moving on. I was serious about that as well. I was going to make this part of the video originally just me shitting on FNAS 3, but the next day when I wasn't overly tired and losing my mind, I decided to give the game another chance, and I'm very glad I did. Even when Night 1 just seems like a FNAF 3 clone, with minimal changes, Night 2 onwards starts adding new gimmicks and characters to deal with, which makes the overall gameplay experience much more crowded, but a lot more fun in my opinion. First up, we have the new option on the reboot panel, this being the power. Your power will go down at a pretty fast pace, but you're able to put it back at 100% by clicking the option on the panel and waiting a few seconds for it to reset. It's pretty much just a glorified music box that's a lot less threatening overall, but it's a nice addition that doesn't actually make the gameplay ridiculously hard or anything. It actually feels quite balanced. The mask from FNAS 2 is also here, and it works to repel the broken down versions of the toy animatronics that will show up over the playthrough. I like the addition of these guys, and think using the mask to repel them actually works very well in the FNAF 3 gameplay loop. Now, if the Springtrap equivalent, Salvage Sonic, was super hard to deal with, then this entire loop would fall apart. Thankfully though, it is very easy to keep him going between 2 rooms with the audio lure, so he never really feels like a threat as long as you keep him in check. So he's easy to keep at bay, but if you get too occupied with the toy animatronics, you may forget about him and let him slip by. It creates a very fun balance and never really feels unfair, which is very surprising. Other than the movement of the office and the mask still feeling like shit to use, which is to be expected at this point with these games. I genuinely had more fun with this game than I did playing FNAF 3, which I know sounds ridiculous, and it probably is, but it's really what I felt playing it. I had no idea this game would go from terrible to actually kind of fun within the span of 24 hours, but somehow it happened. Oh, there's also the Phantom animatronics. They work the same way they did in FNAF 3 for the most part, and serve as another layer of challenge to keep an eye on. Like I said, if Salvage Sonic was a real pain in the ass to deal with the entire game, it would all fall apart in my opinion. But he's really easy to deal with, and it acts as just another thing to remember to keep an eye on. This game has a very FNAF 4-esque juggling act feel to it, which if you know me, I absolutely love. You gotta keep Salvage Sonic between the rooms you can keep track of, make sure the power doesn't run out, check for phantoms to avoid them, put the mask on when the toys appear, and make sure to time your panel resets so you don't get screwed over. The panel resets make it so you can't put your mask on, but the toy animatronics can still enter the room while you do them, which means you have to time your resets when you're sure the toy animatronics won't be back for a bit. Is it perfect? Far from it. But I had some dumb fun with it, which is more than I can say for FNAF 3 for the most part, being honest. There's some more lore cutscenes between nights yet again, but like I said earlier, I don't really care about the lore in these games. I barely care about the lore in actual FNAF, so I sure as hell don't want to start thinking about this as well. There's also a good ending, which I didn't end up doing myself, but I looked it up on YouTube and I have to say, I like the idea of the location burning down while you're still playing. It's a really nice touch. That wraps up FNAS 3. You can really tell the Cyvap was starting to understand how to add new features to his games at this point, rather than just copying what the actual FNAF games did. Next up we have a game that should be a surefire hit in my books. I love FNAF 4, this game wasn't awful, So a FNAS game based on FNAF 4 should be right up my alley. There's no way they could screw this up, right? I hate this game. I want to like it, okay? But seriously, fuck this game. It was almost fun, but guys, I didn't even beat this one. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I would rather replay Candies 2 3 times over than play this game to completion on the original release of it. Okay, let's back up here and start from the top. This game features the player going back to the FNAS 1 location, but this time they have to deal with nightmare monster versions of the FNAS 1 cast. Seems pretty simple, right? The office doors have been taken away this time around, so when you hear breathing, you have to run back and hide under the table while they walk past you. It's a cool idea, I will admit. Then you have Tails, who resides in a cove behind you, that you need to shine a light on to repel him. Pretty much just the Freddles. And finally there's the vent. When the creature called the Toy Mare gets to the vent, you have to close the door on him and wait for him to leave. I do not hate these mechanics. In fact, they are very similar to FNAF 4, a game I love, but with some very slight changes. So what's the issue here? If I like this game and think it has solid mechanics, where is the issue? Okay, so breathing is a key aspect of this game and FNAF 4, as you probably already know. When you hear breathing at the door, it's time to act and defend yourself. For this to work, the breathing must be consistent and always play when a threat is close by. Well, during my playthrough, I had 2 different occasions where I went to a door, no breathing played, and I was waiting for a good amount of time, by the way. I was not being too fast, and when I shined the light at the door, I got jump scared and died.
Yeah, so you still don't know.
Okay, oh my god! Where the fuck is the breathing? Oh my god, And this simple issue makes the game super unfair and unplayable in my eyes. Maybe I just had the worst luck ever, I don't know. My best guess on why this happens is that the animatronics can move to the breathing position while you're already at the door, and that the exact moment I shine my light was one of the first frames of them being at the door, so no sound of breathing was played. If this is the case, this is extremely unfair game design, and I have no shame stopping at night 3 for this one. I get the gist of the gameplay. If there's a recode that fixes this, then I would gladly play that instead. But as it stands, I don't care enough to sit down and play through this bullshit. One final thing that makes this game a pain in the ass to play is the length of the nights. In FNAS 3, even though the nights went to 8 AM instead of 6 AM, the game was balanced enough that the nights never felt too long or unfair. Here, however, I have a major gripe regarding the time. The nights in FNAF 4 last 6 minutes, 1 minute per 1 hour in-game. I think this is the perfect amount of time for a FNAF 4 style game, and hits a good sweet spot where nights never feel too long, but they don't feel too easy as well. Here in FNAS 4, the nights are 1.5 minutes longer for some baffling reason, coming in at 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Why this was done is beyond me, and makes each night feel like an absolute drag. Somehow, this is the worst game yet, when it was pretty much lined up to be the absolute best in the series for me. This just leaves one final game in the main series to talk about. Unlike what you're probably thinking here, FNAS 5 is not a sister location game. There was going to be a FNAS sister location, which we'll get into a bit later, but this game was in development before sister location even came out. For the first time in FNAS history, FNAS 5 is a fully original game with a unique map, unique mechanics, and a whole lot more. The SciVap had 4 tries with this series at this point. Surely, FNAS 5 will be an absolute hit. There's no way he screws this one up. Let's see it. This may be one of the most mind-numbing FNAF fan games that I have ever played. FNAS 5 was almost good. There are things I do like about it, but the journey to get to said things is an absolute slog. This time around, we're just dealing with one character, Golden Sonic. This is the only prequel in the entire series, so think of this as if we got a FNAF game that took place at Fredbear's Family Diner. You have a huge door in the middle of your office, with 2 more doors on both sides of the room. Your goal is to make sure Golden Sonic doesn't get in your room, which is pretty standard for a FNAF game. Here's where the issue comes in. This game is way too easy, and you're pretty much doing nothing for the entire game. Nights 1 through 4 consist of just dealing with Golden Sonic, meaning that you can pretty much be on the cams the entire game, looking directly at Golden Sonic and nothing else. The only thing you have to worry about is charging the power, similar to FNAS 3, there's another music box-esque mechanic that has to do with making sure the power doesn't run out. Although this time, it's even more like the music box than before, since it goes up 1% at a time rather than a full reset. But during the normal nights, this power system is never a big enough threat to really take that much time away from looking at Golden Sonic. So pretty much, this entire game boils down to looking at Sonic on the cameras as he slowly moves from room to room, occasionally powering up the building, and shining a light on him when he appears at the door. It's really that simple. Actually, there's one more mechanic they introduced during these nights, that being the vent system. 2 of the cameras are linked to vents that Golden Sonic can enter. You can close these vents on the cameras that have them. If Golden Sonic gets an event, it's pretty much game over. But this is really never an issue, because since you only have to worry about Golden Sonic, you will never forget to check whether he's in a room with a vent or not. Closing the vents does make the power deplete faster, but it's never really an issue when you only have to deal with one enemy. The final nail in the coffin for this game is the lengths of the nights. They are so goddamn long. We're back to 12 to 6. But we might as well still be going to 8. Because of the absolute lack of things going on in the nights, it feels like they go on for way too long. I almost dropped this game like I did with FNAS 4. I was really close. If the whole game was going to be this easy, mind-numbing and boring, what would be the point of continuing? However, something within me made me continue, and I'm glad I did. Night 5 is still incredibly easy, but it actually adds another threat after the entire game of just dealing with one character. Shadow Sonic will now appear on the cameras, and if you stay on a camera for too long with him, he'll jump scare you. This would maybe be a more threatening mechanic if Shadow Sonic hit on the cameras better, but he's pretty easy to see and gives you a lot of time to react to him before he attacks. Even if he's still in the same room as Golden Sonic, that really just gives you a reason to go charge up the power, so he's never really an actual threat, making Night 5 only slightly more interesting overall. Shadow Sonic can also come to your door, but it never ended up happening to me during Night 5, so yeah, it was pretty easy. If that was truly all FNAS 5 had to offer, I would probably leave this game feeling extremely disappointed. However, Night 6 is a whole different beast. During the cutscenes between nights, different versions of Golden Sonic start to appear. None of them actually join your night, but this idea that there are multiple Golden Sonics is built up during the entire game. This finally leads to Night 6, where finally, all the different Golden Sonics start to attack you. After 5 nights of boring, slow, and drawn-out gameplay, Night 6 is a genuine breath of fresh air, and is actually very fun to play. Of course, we have Golden Sonic and Shadow again, who act no different than they already did during previous nights. But now there are 4 more versions of Golden Sonic to deal with on top of that. Nightmare Golden Sonic is pretty much just another Golden Sonic to deal with, but he has different paths for the most part. This alone already adds way more depth to the gameplay, because now there can be 2 animatronics coming at 2 different vents, making it a much bigger threat for your power than it was before. On top of that, you can't just look at one character the entire night now. You have to strategize and make sure to keep tabs on both Golden Sonic and Nightmare Golden Sonic. 15 Golden Sonic is pretty easy to deal with. Once you see the Golden Sonic posters on the camera turn red, you know he's waiting for you in the office. All you have to do is put the camera down and put it back up right away to stop him from attacking you. 17 Golden Sonic will occasionally show up in the hallway, which means he's getting ready to enter the office. Once he does, just put the camera up and wait for the flickering to end. Finally, we have 27 Golden Sonic. He has a random chance to show up on the cameras. If you don't change the camera or put down the camera fast enough, he'll jump scare you. All of these mechanics combined create an actual fun challenge that I quite enjoyed. However, the slow, boring gameplay for 5 straight nights to get to that point was absolutely not worth it. The game would be infinitely more interesting if Nightmare Golden Sonic was added during night 2 or 3, and the rest of them were slowly added for the rest of the game. Having the only interesting night be the final one is a baffling choice, and I wonder how many people straight up dropped the game before it actually got good. There is actual potential here, but the way the content is paced out makes no sense and ruins any of that potential immediately. Once you beat the game, you're given access to both a custom night and an endless mode. More FNAF games should have an endless mode. It works really well with the core gameplay ideas, and it's fun seeing how long you can last. It's a really good addition. Okay, for those of you who know everything about this game already, I should probably address the elephant in the room. That being hard mode. Yes, when you beat the hardest challenge on custom night, you unlock a hard mode where you go through the entire game again, but with new designs for the characters and a harder difficulty. I didn't have a lot of time to try and unlock this mode, since I still had a lot more to do for this video, but I gave it an honest shot and got pretty close like twice. I wish I could have actually unlocked hard mode to tell you guys what I thought about it, but I had to move on at some point. Just know that even if hard mode fixed my issues with the core 5 nights, that doesn't change the fact that you play 5 boring, slow nights just to get to the actual fun part of the game. And with that, finally, we are done talking about the main 5 Five Nights at Sonic's games. It wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be when going into it, but trust me, my expectations were extremely low. That doesn't change the fact that most of these games are just not fun to play. However, we do have to keep in mind, most people just watch FNAF games, they don't actually play them. So even though the gameplay and core ideas of most of these games are subpar or boring, the community around the FNAS series was still growing, both on YouTube and on GameJolt. Countless Let's Play channels would play the FNAS games, some of which are even referenced in the games themselves. Five Nights at Sonic's was, and still is, extremely popular. However, even with the core series out of the way, we're not done yet. There are countless spin-offs, failed projects, and notable fan games that we have to talk about. Trust me everybody, we're just at the tip of the iceberg. Strap in. Before I get into this section, I have to once again give a huge shout out to Smiler for doing the interview with me, and a viewer of mine on Twitter, HiDeveloper913, for pointing me towards one of the most useful resources when it comes to cancelled FNAS content. The resource in question is JG's FNAS Wiki, which they created due to the lack of information present on the actual FNAS Wiki. There are pages upon pages here, countless fan projects, scrapped games, developers, and much, much more. If you still want to go even farther down this rabbit hole after you're done with this video, I highly recommend giving this wiki a look. I feel it's only appropriate to bring up the game I mentioned earlier, that being Five Nights at Sonic's sister location. This was supposed to come out on Halloween of 2016, but ended up being scrapped for one reason or another. The only remaining content I could find regarding it is a trailer, which is only preserved thanks to a reaction video and a couple images on the wiki. It seems this game would have taken a much different approach, being based on FNAS team members rather than the core FNAS cast itself. One of the characters is literally called Funtime Ian, which is the Cyvap's real name. The game ended up getting cancelled, with FNAS 5 coming out instead, which was probably a good call. Speaking of the FNAS team, now would be the best time to bring up said team. While I'm not going to go over every team member because I really see no reason for that, I will talk about them as a group. Originally, they were just known as the FNAS dev team, but when I asked about it in my interview with Smiler, this is what he said. It started out as a 5-person group, and was called the FNAS dev team. The members were the Cyvap, Boo Gaming, Sonic4925, Babzakut, and Gren Murr. There was a 6th member after FNAS 5 came out, and a backup member, which was me. Some internal issues happened, and the team reformed as Team Scientix, going back to 5 members, with me being one of them. After FNAS 5, the team would formally be known as Team Scientix. This team would be responsible for all FNAS projects going forward. There was an attempt by the team to make a FNAS 6, which would have taken place after the events of FNAS 5's hard mode, but like most of these projects, it ended up getting cancelled fairly early into development, with little to no screenshots or footage released. From what is public, however, it seems like the Cyvap wasn't that involved with this project, even if it was being made under Team Scientix. Their most notable project by far is Five Nights at Sonic's Maniac Mania, which is essentially just the ultimate custom out of the series. I didn't have too much time to play it, but I tried a couple challenges to get a good feel for it, and it's pretty well made. Some things still feel kind of clunky, such as putting on the mask, but the art direction is a lot better, while still keeping that signature Five Nights at Sonic's charm. Characters from the entire series are represented here, and the mechanics all work together well in ways that are quite fair. I'll definitely go back and play more of this game when I'm feeling up to it, but this game alone shows that Team Scientix meant business, and were ready to start seriously upping their game in both the art and gameplay departments. This game also features a character called Lefty Sonic, who isn't from any official FNAS games, but instead originates from Sonic's Pizzeria Simulator. Sonic's Pizzeria Simulator is a now deleted Five Nights at Sonic's fan game made by Team Scientix member Babzakut. Can you see why this shit is such a rabbit hole? There are so many layers to this series, it's actually insane. If I was a complete outsider, I would have a very hard time figuring out what's an official game and what's not. There were plans to make a FNAS Maniac Mania Plus, but they never ended up going anywhere, and Team Scientix actually ended up disbanding shortly after this. In my interview with Smiler, he stated that he thinks the reason for Team Scientix's downfall was that the Cyvap, becoming tired of the FNAS series, ended up cancelling existing FNAS projects, such as Rock Clones. Rock Clones was a Mega Man-style FNAS game that never ended up getting released, but there is a playable build of it, and some attempts to revive it within the community. The team became less of a team, and more of just a group of friends shortly after the cancellation of Rock Clones. This allowed the Cyvap to go work on his own projects, such as his current game project, Soul Space. What remains of the FNAS team is currently working on projects such as All Stars, a new collection of the FNAS games that are fully recoded and rebalanced, and Maniac Mania Infinite, which is an attempt to remake Maniac Mania. Yeah, even after so long, there's a ton of FNAS stuff in the work, and the community is still fairly active. We are almost done here. But before we wrap up, I'd like to go over quickly some of the official FNAS spin-off games. First up, there's FNAS Tale, which, like the name implies, is an Undertale fan game with the characters from Five Nights at Sonic's. This game was going to have actual lore relevance for some reason, like not just side stuff or whatever. This was going to take place directly after Five Nights at Sonic's 4. I don't have much to say about this one other than it existed and it got cancelled. Finally, the most insane part of this story yet. Okay, when I interviewed Smiler and asked some questions about Five Nights at Sonic spin-off stuff, he brought up a game called Five Nights at Sonic's World. And I quote, "We don't talk about FNAS World." This only made me more interested. Of course, like most Five Nights at Sonic's games, it was deleted long ago, so official uploads were out of the question. Eventually, someone from my Discord shared a Google Drive link with the game. Okay, this audio is gonna sound really bad compared to everything else, because I'm recording this off the cuff. But when I went to go check who sent the Google Drive link, it's JG from the wiki, the person who owns the wiki page. Everything here is connected. I swear to God, everything here is connected. Anyway, yeah, I'll let past me continue now. Thanks, bye. Easy, we got the game, right? Not so fast. I was skeptical. I wasn't about to download a random Google Drive link onto my computer without some reassurance that it would be safe. One of my friends who uses Linux downloaded the game for me to scan it. Because if there was some kind of virus in it, it definitely would not have been designed for Linux. That way, I would be safe and we could be 100% certain. Well, sure enough, there was a fucking Trojan virus in the exe file in that Google Drive. Listen, I'm not blaming the person who sent it over, they probably just found it on the internet, but I really don't feel like getting a Trojan virus to play what is essentially a shitty FNAF World clone. Do I think this game was released with a virus originally? Of course not. But this is what happens when official resources for these things aren't kept up for archival purposes. People will be assholes and put malicious viruses in re-uploads. Safe to say, I think this is a good stopping point for me, and I'm coming out of the rabbit hole now. Good riddance. This has easily been the most exhausting video project I have ever worked on. So many games, so much lore. Guys, I'm tired. The Five Nights at Sonic series is one that has had a massive impact on the internet. Whether that be good or bad is up to you. Millions upon millions of YouTube views, people still playing and talking about the games to this day. For what really just boiled down to one kid's programming practice, this series has stood the test of time somehow and remains somewhat active to this day. Do I entirely get it? No, not really. But I'm glad a community of people can find enjoyment out of this stuff. I would like to close out this video with Smiler's ending statement from our interview. Other than that, the Five Nights at Sonic series lives on through fans. It might not be the most amazing series, but it has a lot of dedicated fans and some amazing people with amazing talent. It speaks volumes of the impact Five Nights at Sonic's had for what quality it showed and how big it is, even after it ended. I've been yeah, and thanks for 200k everybody. And before I go, just a quick reminder to go and download Dragon City using the link in the description or the QR code on screen. It's free and helps support the channel. Thanks everybody.